I love that each of these artworks had all of these beautiful earth tones, so I prepare all of my paints and get everything ready, and I like to be really comfortable, and then I sit down and I think about where I'm going to start. And often for me, which object to start with begins usually on the left hand side of the canvas, because not many people know this, but earlier on in my career I trained as a sign writer, and so I like to work on a vertical surface. I find it really difficult to work on a flat surface, and I like to work from left to right. So there's all these kind of little hints of my past coming back out, and they're things that have helped me get to the point where I've come up with this style, which some have referred to as photorealism, and there is an element of realism to it, but I find the pressure of myself of calling it photorealism doesn't really resonate for me. It's a version of realism that just feels right for me. Glassware, you can imagine, it's actually quite challenging. It's probably one of the most difficult elements to execute. And I like to use these very, very fine, tiny little brushes, and they're like a 000, which is a very, very tiny little brush. And I start with the outline, and then I work my way in. And I do a base underneath, and then I build the layers over the top. So the way I see it when I'm painting glassware specifically is, if you think of a glass as a three-dimensional object, it's not something that you can just paint from start to finish and then it's done. It has to be built in layers, because if you look through a glass, you're looking through layers. And that's something else I learnt earlier on in my career as a sign writer, and I feel that's actually a really powerful tool for getting a very realistic result when it comes to the glassware. So I like to build the layers, and actually have applied that theory to most of the objects that I paint over time. So for instance, when I'm painting the rocks, I start with the background and I create a three-dimensional ball shape using different colours and shades, and then over the top of that I'll build the layers with textures, and then right at the very end I'll come across with these very, very tiny little brushes, and I might spend somewhere up to 2 or 3 days finishing off just the surface of one rock, because for me there's something quite therapeutic and meditative about executing that. And then when I leave and walk away and I come back the next day, I can see the elements that need to be adjusted. I feel as though I'm very considered every single stroke. A lot of thought goes into that stroke, and even when it comes to mixing the colours, I spend a lot of time working out which base colours to use, and then building. You know, if you think of a rock, for example, some people might say that's a grey rock, or that's a brown rock, or that might have 2 different colours in it. But for me, when I'm building the colours of an object, I could use up to 15 or 20 different oils, and then I build the colours and create the colours myself. Because if you think about nature, we may look in a childlike way and say the ocean's blue, but if you look in more detail, you'll discover that there's actually, you know, several hues that are involved to get that shade. So I feel as though there's a lot that goes into building those colours and building those shapes.